La diffusion vient de démarrer. Tous les participants sont en mode écoute seule.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to spend the next 2 hours talking with you about the Sixth National Report Project. Diego, I don't think it's in presentation mode. The slide is just...
Okay, hold on, sorry. Okay. Let me know if now it's working.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, today we'll be talking about the UNDP GEF Global Project that is providing technical support to your country to produce the Sixth National Report to the CBD. Next slide, please. I wanted to take a few minutes to introduce the project team. My name is Christina Supples, and I'm the technical project advisor for this project for UNDP. We also have Petra, a project associate who's based in Bratislava and handles all of our operations. We have Marion Marigot, who's our technical specialist who speaks French. And if you're in this webinar today, it's likely because you spoke with her and she helped get you here. We also have Martin Cadena, who's our Spanish-speaking technical specialist. He's based in Mexico. And we have Diego Ochoa, our communications specialist, who's based in Colombia. I'll now turn it over to Lige at CBD to introduce the key actors on his team for this project.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning to us, to our colleagues, UNDP. I'm Lige Kai. I'm a program officer for National Reports and the CBD Secretariat. I guess, Diego, okay. And then I guess my colleagues also, Robert Hoft and Monique Chesson and probably Gisela also join from home. So that's our team in the CBD Secretariat.
Great, thank you, Lige. We also work very closely with our UN Environment colleagues, Bianca and Julian, who work in the Nairobi Wildlife Unit Ecosystems Division. We did invite our UN Environment colleagues and countries to join us today. So if you're on the line from UN Environment, welcome and thank you for coming to join us today in this Inception workshop. Okay, next slide, please. The agenda for today is that Lige will begin with an overview of the Sixth National Report. What is it? What is its timelines? And why is it important within the context of the CBD? And then also, what are the overall deliverables and expectations the CBD Secretariat has related to the Sixth National Reporting process? After that, we'll turn it over to Marion, and she will talk about the project, the actual GEF project and the objectives, the expected results, and the timeline that are included in the project document that we all share. Then Lige and I will talk you through the technical tools available to support you on the project. This, we've done 3 other Inception workshops, and this takes about an hour and a half with questions. And then the last half an hour we'll spend with Petra talking about the project implementation arrangements. As we go through the presentation, we will pause for questions at the end of each section. I just want to let you know that there's 2 ways you can communicate with us. The first is to raise your hand. Just raise your hand, and when we get to a place where we can take your question, we'll unmute you and you can ask it. The other thing you can do is put your question in the question box, and no one has done that yet, but throughout the presentation, if you have a question, you can just go ahead and put it in. And then if it's something we can answer easily, like I can't see the presentation or my audio isn't working or things like that, we'll just type them in as we go. If it's a bigger question, we'll save them until we get to a break in the presentation, and then we'll ask. We're really here as a resource for you today, so we encourage you to ask as many questions as you can as we go throughout the process. So with that, everyone in the audience is on mute, and when we get to the questions, as I said, we'll unmute you as we go. With that, I'll turn it over to Lige to give us an overview of the Sixth National Report process. Thank you, Lige.
Thank you, Chrissy. Good evening again. Maybe you hear a little bit noise from my heating in the room. Sorry for that. Next slide, please. As you all know that at COP13 that the countries are encouraged to submit their sixth national report by the end of this year, December 31st of 2018. So we want to start with that. Just remind you that the report will be due at the end of this year. Next slide, please. As this diagram shows that the sixth national report provides the final review of the progress in the implementation of the strategy plan for 2011-2020 and its AG targets. And also the sixth national report contributed to the development of the 5th edition of the Global Biodiversity Outlook. And also, of course, you know, the sixth national report also contributed to the assessments to be done by other conventions as well. So I just want you to know that the sixth national report is very important, and the timely submission is very important for the process of the convention. And also, finally, I want to emphasize that the sixth national report is very key, important source of information to support the development of the post-2020 strategic frameworks. Next slide, please. Next slide. And as you have seen, the reporting template of the sixth national report is a mix of the multiple choice questions and then the narrative text to provide the details. The sixth national report should focus on the progress towards the national targets, and then assess the effectiveness of the measures for implementation of the MBSAPs, and then identify the lessons and challenges learned, and also the needs for the further support for implementation. And most importantly, the sixth national report, you need to provide the assessments of your national contribution towards the achievement of H targets and the targets of the global strategy for plant conservation. Next slide, please. The sixth national report altogether has 7 sections, as you see here. All the sections are listed here. I just want to say that the first 4 sections are the mandatory. You have to report on all these sections. And then section 5 and section 6 are optional, but we encourage countries to report on these 2 if you have information on this, particularly on the global strategy for the plant conservation, and also for section 6 if you have additional information for the contribution of indigenous people and local communities. And finally, section 5, you needed to update your country profiles. I will go to a little bit details on each section. Section 1, here you needed to enter your national targets included in your MBSAPs or in other similar strategies or plans. So, and then you needed to relate to your national targets to the relevant H targets, either directly or indirectly. Next slide, please. In section 2, here the countries need to report on each major implementation measures taken for the implementation of MBSAPs or conventions, and then you needed to do the assessments how effective these measures are in achieving the outcomes and then objectives of the conventions and the targets you have set for at national level. And then you needed to identify the obstacles you have encountered in the implementation, and also the needs for the further support. Next slide, please. Section 3, here you need to do the assessment of the progress towards the national targets, which you have included in your MBSAPs. In the case that you don't have in national targets, you only use the H targets as national targets. So here you do the assessments of progress towards each of H targets at national level. And you can use your indicators, and you can use the information from monitoring and to do the assessments. And after do the assessments, you needed to provide the evidence to support your assessments and indicate the level of the confidence in the assessments. Next slide, please. Section 4. Here you needed to describe how and to what extent your country has contributed to the achievements of H targets. And then also you needed to describe how this contribution supports implementation of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. If your national targets are the same as the H targets, you don't need to repeat what is already covered in the section 3, but you could provide additional analysis of to what extent your country has contributed to the global H targets. Next slide, please. Here, as I said, that this section is optional, but we encourage countries to describe the national contribution to the achievement of the targets of global strategy for plant conservation. And maybe you have noted that some of the targets in this strategy are related to the H targets. So if you have already information covered in the section 3 or section 4, so you don't need to repeat them here, but you just cross-reference. But if you have additional information to provide, please do provide it here. Next slide, please. The same for the section 6. Here, if you have already covered the information about the contribution from the indigenous people and local communities to achieve H targets, you don't need to repeat them. But if you have any additional information to provide, please provide in this section, because this is particular about the contribution of indigenous people and local communities. Next slide, please. Finally, the section 7. Here, you needed to provide update the country profiles, which already on the CBD website. And here, you don't need to provide any additional new information. You needed to just pull all the information from the sections before this section together and then arrange the information according to the items provided here, like status and trends of biodiversity, implementation MBSAPs, and then action taken to implement the strategy plan and monitoring and review mechanism. So all this information may be already covered in the previous sections, and you just need to pull them together. But of course, maybe you have some additional new information that you need to put it here. Please do put here in a very concise way, and then so that we can upload your updated country profiles on the new new website. Sorry, on the CBD website. So next slide, please. In the meantime, CBD Secretariat also has developed some tools and materials to support the preparation of Six National Report. Here are the main ones, and one is the resource manual for Six National Reports. The other one is online reporting tool, and then the last one is H target post tool. I will say more about these tools in a few minutes. So I will stop here. So I want to just say, anytime you have questions about the preparation of the Six National Report, please do contact me and send me questions. And and then we'll try to get back to you. Next slide, please. Quickly, this is all the work we have done so far, and then we'll move on the next stage. So next slide, please. So in the next few months, and we also provide the more support to the countries together with UNDP and UNEP and other partners, and we also do the one-on-one conversation with the parties if they're interested. We can have Skype calls and phone calls. We can have webinars to discuss how we're going to prepare the Six National Report, and we're also going to provide training and support to the use of online reporting tool. And lastly, I will say that the Secretariat would be happy to review your draft reports anytime they are ready, and then we help you to finalize reports by providing comments and suggestions to help you. So that's all I have now, and I will say more about these tools in a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Lige, for that excellent introduction. We have a question. Can I please have this presentation? Yes, we will share the presentation and a recording of it for folks that couldn't be here today, or if you'd like to share it around your offices by the end of tomorrow. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marion to give us a project introduction.
Thank you, Chrissy. Hello, everyone. I am Marianne Marigot, and I work as a consultant with UNDP to provide support on the technical issues for the 6NR project. We will go through the objective, the result expected, component and outcomes, and a timeline for this project. And probably this is not new information for you because it's all in the product that you must have received a few months ago. Next slide, please, Diego. So the 6NR that you will write has a few requirements that must be respected. So it has to be, of course, high quality, it must be gender responsive and data driven. When we say high quality, that means that we want to ensure an efficient communication with you in the next month. So we will use all the available tools for you to improve the quality of your report, to fully understand how to use them. And of course, we will also do a peer review of your report early enough so you can address our comments, if any, and you will be able to finalize the report before we submit it. Gender responsive. It's critical to ensure the gender is central in your report. That means that each of the assessments you will do, you will have to include the specific impact, either negative or positive, on women, and how you intend to empower women in the future, not just to empower women, but to find ways to increase their roles and responsibilities in the conservation activities. To do so, we will provide guidance through webinars on how to engage with women's groups, how to involve them in each conservation activities, and what benefits you get from that. And we will also have a gender section on the quarterly report that will guide you, and we discuss that later. And last, the 6NR must be based on tangible and clear data. So we know that sometimes the data are pretty hard to access, and that's why we develop tools to ensure the resources are more accessible for you. So we have tools to provide spatial data that are necessary to assess the state of biodiversity in your country. We also have a stakeholder engagement guidance to make you connect with the relevant groups in your country, such as the indigenous peoples, women's groups, experts, etc., to prepare a good data-driven 6NR. The 6NR will be supporting the national decision-making process, so all the decisions made on biodiversity conservation and more generally on environment can be more efficient. And as Lige said, the 6NR will also report on progress toward achieving the 2080 biodiversity target, and this will constitute a solid base of information to prepare the 5th edition of the Global Biodiversity Outlook. So briefly, the GBO is a report, a periodic report on biological diversity that provides a summary of the status of biodiversity and an analysis of the steps that have been taken by the global community to make sure that biodiversity is conserved and used sustainably. And therefore, this GBO will be important because it will provide guidance for the post-2020 agenda. And as such, your 6NR is contributing directly to the Global Biodiversity Strategy 2021 to 2030. So as we said already, you're contributing also to other international commitments like the SDGs, and more generally, this report is an occasion for you to emphasize the link between biodiversity and climate change. Next slide, please. So this is what the 6NR project looks like. So we have component, and within each component, we have one outcome, so divided in outputs. We're gonna go through this very briefly. Next slide, please. So the first component is about the Inception meeting and the identification of funding resources. So we see that the steering committee that we call the SC has been constituted at the national level and it's ready to operate. It's preparing the 6NR, preparing the capacity building activities and mobilizing the funds. So if you look at the outputs here, we see that the coordination roles are assigned to each member of the SC, and the SC developed the working plan and a timeline at the national level. And the SC is also in charge of accessing the funding and identify potentially other funding resources. So these two outputs must be done by the end of this month, so pretty much today or in a few days. And last, the SC must identify training and capacity building opportunities by the end of March, and we will be providing a lot of trainings too, so that can be supporting you. Next slide, please. The component 2, so it's about the assessment of progress toward each national targets, and this is maybe the most central component of the project. By the end of July, each country should have a first draft for each ABT, and then consultation with stakeholders must be undertaken to verify the data and address the information gap for each ABT. And last, a report for each ABT is developed, and those two elements must be ready by the end of September. Please keep in mind that the consultations with stakeholders can happen as many times as you want. The more you involve them, the better. And last slide, please. The production and the submission of the 6NR, as we all know. It must be ready by the end of this year, and we will do a peer review of the report before you submit it. So please, whenever you have a draft in between June and December, let us know, and the earlier you can, when you will be able to share the draft with us, the better, because we're coordinating 64 countries, and we want to make sure we have, a planning ahead so we can provide the best comments and the best feedback. Do you have any questions so far? Next slide, Diego. Thank you. Oh, yeah. And this is briefly actually a timeline that recaps all the deadline of this project. That makes it easy for you to see where you should be at what time of the year. You can see on the bottom right of your screen that you have a square purple, and this is for the next year on 2019, but so far we prefer really to focus and be on time for 2019. Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions so far. So I see that we have a question. How do we arrange one-on-one Skype calls with UNDP, CO, and governments? What is the time frame for this? Chrissy, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we take Skype calls all the time. The best thing that you can do is just to get in touch with Marion or I, and we can arrange that for you. I think that's a question talking to us. If it's between your country office and your government, then we leave that up to you. And if there's some challenges there, then Lige and I can work with you on that. We'll send out a follow-up email after this call, or like I said, by the end of tomorrow, and that will include the emails and Skype information for the team that I'm working with at the global level.
I see there's another question, written question on showcasing best practices. Indeed, we are also ourselves working on showcasing best practices from the 5th national report from the last report to, provide guidance on what does a best practice look like. We would encourage you to highlight best practices by connecting with the relevant stakeholders. You may find that some projects have been run at the local, regional project or regional level in your country, and that must be scaled up and replicated as a larger scale. And this may be a best practice, and you explain why is it good, why is it gender responsive, how can it be scaled up with what support. That can be an example of a best practice. We really encourage you to connect with different actors and find out.
Great, thank you. I wanted to share that there's a section on the MBSAT forum for best practices, and we would love to also capture your work there.
I think we have a hand raised from Iwan. So I'm going to unmute you. Can you hear us? Hi, Iwan, can you hear us? I don't think we can hear you, Iwan. So maybe you can just type your question and we will read it out loud. I know we have a couple of more questions. We have Leos that is a bit concerned about the timeline. And we understand that. We know this is a short timeline for all the countries, and all the countries are pretty much at the same stage right now. We're just confident that by engaging with the relevant stakeholders and the government, you will be able to assess the state of biodiversity and assess the progresses made for each APT. Please know that we're here to support you. And of course, when we say that we want to have a draft as early as June, we're not expecting everyone to submit a draft in June. And we know you can, keep working on this until the end of the year. We're confident, though, that with the help and the support of different stakeholders, you can produce a high quality project in this time. Chrissy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm seeing that you have your Inception workshop with the government and development partners on Monday. That's great. We can make sure that you have the presentation to download and use by tomorrow at the latest.
Perfect.
The next question from Marcy is that she's not hearing anything. It's probably a problem with your audio on your computer if you can't hear anything, or an internet challenge. Diego, do you have any immediate advice on that?
Yes, he should review the audio settings in the computer. And if it's not working, I would suggest to log out and log in again. If the problem persists, GoToWebinar also offers phone numbers to communicate directly. So he might want to review the GoToWebinar homepage and see which phone number works for their countries.
Great. Could you type that into the chat box? And then also, Marcy, if you go to the audio tab, you can switch to phone call. Unfortunately, it's not a free international number, but hopefully you could use Skype to call in that way. And sometimes for me, if I just switch back to phone call and then back over to computer audio, it works. Sorry about that challenge.
We have a few more questions that we can take. What are the steps required for validation for the report? Margaret is asking. Maybe I can let you reply, Chrissy or Ligia.
Yeah, Ligia, I think that's a question for you.
Yeah, please.
So the question is, what are the steps required for validation for the report?
That first thing, that the countries, they do their own national validation, and of course, as Christy probably will say in a few minutes, sometimes UNDP want to do some technical review and using the framework, and also if the countries wish to have the comments and suggestions from Secretariat, we really appreciate that you could send your draft reports to us, and we'll send the comments and suggestions within a few days. So that's something in my mind now. I'm not so sure if this answers the questions.
Thank you, Ligia. I agree with all of that. I also wanted to note, Marion, we skipped a question from Ahmed, which is the timeline for countries might differ, as in Afghanistan is a bit behind. And I wanted to say that's okay. This timeline is a guide for you. We strongly encourage you, along with CBD, to complete your report by the end of this year. That's the expectation with the Convention on Biological Diversity, and Ligia's provided a pretty detailed overview of why that timeline is so important. We, at the same time, recognize that things come up, and so if your country's in a situation where the timeline is going to be challenging, we ask that you have that conversation with us along the way, so it's not an issue in November that you don't have the data or haven't started the project, or the steering committee groups aren't available. We want to know that throughout the project so that we can help you problem solve and ensure that all of the critical data are done by the end of this year. Ligia, is there anything that you'd want to add there on timeline to make sure I represent the perspective correctly?
In terms of the timeline, what CBD can say now is that we do hope that all the countries will submit a report by the deadline, which is the end of this year. And of course, if you can submit it earlier, that would be the best. And as you suggested, if you could have a drafts in July and August, that would be the best.
Yes, and with that, I want to jump just on a question of Marcy that is asking why we talk about June if we know not everybody is going to be there at this time. We talk about June not as a deadline, but more as an indication, and we know some countries may move forward a bit faster than others, and we're happy to receive different version of the draft so we can comment. So if you have a first draft on maybe one ABT by June or July, and you would like to submit it to us so we can review it on the format, etc., and you're more sure of what you should produce in the next few months, then we're happy to do that. So this is why we know you will not be able to do so before June for sure. But if by the summer you have something to submit to us, we're happy to have a look at it and provide guidance. I hope this responds to your question a bit. We have a question to share the presentation. Yes, we will do so, and also a link for the recording of today's presentation. I have a question from Brian asking when is the gender tool available. So we will have a quarterly report with the gender aspect that will be ready, I think, next week. And we will have a series of webinars that will also provide guidance to you that is coming in April. We'll have a webinar on gender and biodiversity that will be likely to be by the end of April, beginning of May. And we'll also have a webinar on stakeholder engagement as a general matter, where we explain how to involve women, and that can provide guidance to you. Christy, do you have anything else to add to this?
Nope, that's great. Great job.
And we have one last question from Grace that says that I think the 6NR will also be a good opportunity to identify contribution to the SDGs, but it seems the questions of the report did not include this. Why is that? We plan to still include that our data, that in our data gathering. I agree with you. Maybe Ligia, you want to respond to that?
Okay, you know that actually I just now I mentioned this in the section 4 of the 6 national report, why you are doing the assessments of the progress of each target, and then in the last section, the part of that section, the countries needed to report on to what extent all these contributions of your country to support the achievement of SDGs. So that is the place where you need to include all the information related to the actions for the implementation of SDGs and linkages with the AG targets.
Great, thank you. And I see Grace also wrote that the Philippines will produce, aside of the online reporting and the national report, they will produce a popular version. We encourage such work if you can to raise awareness among the population. It's always good, and especially if you can communicate about the international agreement. This is great. Thank you for that. Okay, maybe we can move on to the next section.
Great, thank you, Marion. We're now going to move into discussing the technical tools available to help you support the 6 national report development. Next slide, please. So several technical tools are available. We'll start out hearing about the tools that CBD has ready to go on their information portal for you to make sure that you're familiarized with those. And then we'll talk about the various technical support that UNDP can provide you as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ligia to talk about the technical tools available at CBD.
Thanks, Lucy. Next slide, please. Next slide. As I just mentioned a few minutes ago, that CBD has developed a few tools and materials to support the preparation of 6 national report as requested by decision 13/27. So all these tools and materials now ready for use. Next slide, please. So first, I will say a few words about the resource manual, which we think that a very important material to support Sixth National Report. And in the resource manual, it mainly provides the explanation or annotations to the request of the content in the template for the Sixth National Report. I will suggest that you read this very carefully before you start preparing the report, because that will help you to understand what is expected from you to respond to each of these requests. And also we provide some guiding questions to help you to do the assessments, and also in the resource manual also provide some indicators and data sources and information sources that you could use for your assessments or reporting. Next slide, please. First of all, the resource manual starts providing some suggestions for the process of the preparation of report, and you could set up a coordinating working bodies, and also you could use existing bodies, and also we suggest you involving relevant stakeholders, indigenous peoples and local communities, because you want to have a comprehensive report of your national implementation, and also will help you to create ownership of the report. And then we encourage you to use as much as information from all sources, national, regional, even international. And also we want you to do the synergies with other reporting processes so that you can benefit from each other. And also finally, we encourage you to use online reporting tool for inputs from different departments and different institutions. And also, whenever you have a section ready or the whole report ready, you can submit the online reporting tool. I will say more about this later on. Next slide, please. And then we also suggested a few approaches or methods to do the assessments of the progress. And you could use the quantitative indicators, and you could also use the expert's opinion or their advice. And also you could organize consultations with the stakeholders, and then use the case studies to support your assessments or conclusions. I just want to say that each of about the approach I just mentioned has its own strengths and limitations, and you need to combine all this approach as needed, and then depending on your national circumstances, and you make selection of one or several of these approaches just mentioned. Definitely these are not the only ones you can use. You can use any approaches that could suit your national review and assessments. Next slide, please. And as I just said, that the resource manual provides the annotations and explanations of request content in the template for the Sixth National Report. I give you the example here for the assessments of the national target or age targets, and you need to select one of the categories listed here, like on track to exceed the target, on track to achieve target, and then under each of these categories we have these explanations. What do we mean by on track to exceed target or on track to achieve target? So there is a detailed explanation to help you to understand, and then we hope that that will help you to make the suitable selection of the categories to assess your progress. Next slide, please. And we also, for the assessments of age targets, we provide the guiding questions to help you to do the assessments. These are the 4 guiding questions for the age target 1, and we believe that these questions are very essential for your assessments, but they are not the only questions. You could ask other questions as well, but these are the questions we think that could be useful to help you your assessments. Next slide, please. And also have these data sources listed for each target, and most of them are the international source of information or data. You could use them together with your national and regional source of information, and I hope that these are useful ones for your assessments. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's all for the resource manual, but I just want to say that we also have, in the resource manual, we also have a list of the requests from COP meetings and decisions, and that we hope that you could keep all these requests in mind when you prepare the assessments, and so that you could include the relevant information in the relevant sections and parts of the report. The online reporting tool now is ready and available in the 6 UN languages, and you could authorize the national focal points, could authorize the multiple national users to enter the information, and I just want to say that only national focal point has the authority to publish the report, and once you publish the report, and then everybody can see it. But before you publish it, nobody else can see it except the people who authorized to enter the information. And so these, I just want to say that we have the dedicated support on email. If you have questions, you need help, you can send. And also on the line, there is also a help desk as well. I will talk more about that later on. Next slide, please. So I want to show a few screenshots of the tool. Here you see that you need a sign in first, and all the national focus have been provided access codes for sign in this tool. If you have not received it, let me know. We'll register you and then send you the access codes, and then you can activate your accounts. And then next slide, please. And here you see that once you sign in, and then you see this CBD reporting tool, and then you click on it, and then you're in the tool. Next slide, please. So the CHM of the CBD also allows the countries to submit their national reports through the online tool directly. Here you just see the 6 national report, and then when you see click one of the icon to submit your section report when it's ready. Next slide, please. So this is the template for the online reporting for the 6 national report. It's very straightforward and easy to use. And on the top menu, you see all the sections for the report. And then, of course, the title is a little bit brief, but more is all matched to the each section of the 6 national report. And on this screen, you see this is about the target one, section 1. And here you can see that you have you can save the draft. So whenever you have a draft, we encourage you to save the draft as many times as you need. And then you see this green one for publish these only national focal points, or what people authorized by national focal point could publish the report when the report is ready. So next slide, please. And of course, here you see the language bar. And if you plan to use other UN languages, you just click here, and all the UN languages are there, and you can prepare and submit a report in any of these UN languages. And also you see here, there is a small blue circle with question mark or with stars. There, if you click on it, you will find the detailed suggestions, how you're going to answer the questions or how you're going to address the request. Here, all the annotations are included from the resource manual are included here, so that you have the online help directly. And then this small green circle with question mark, as I said, that we have the help desk on the loop. If you have any technical problems using the tools or any questions related to the use of the reporting the report, and then you click on this, and our colleagues will provide you the technical support you need. Next slide, please. Next slide. And also here, you know, this is about the section 2. So it's basically you need to do the assessments of the effectiveness of the measures. So you can pick one of the categories listed here, and then next piece. And then in the space here, you provide the explanation why you make this selection, and then the tools and the methodology you used. And the next slide, please. And here probably you could add some of the materials, and also web links could support your assessments. And finally, and here another one is about the description of the national contribution, and you needed to do this each target for each target of each targets. So this only an example to for the target 1. And finally, we have this target post tool that could help you to consolidate the inputs from different stakeholders when you do the consultation with the stakeholders. And then this post tool can also be used as a communication tool, where you can present your findings and results and conclusions from the 6th national report. So I would say that this tool could only use for consultation, but also for communication as well. Okay, so that's all from our CBD Secretariat. Again, if you have any questions or any need any support to use all of these tools, please do let us know. Thank you so much.
Chrissy, I think you're on mute.
Oh, yes, I was. Okay, I just wanted to say thank you, Miriam, for letting me know. And thank you, Lishe, for that presentation. I see that there are a lot of questions, but having looked through them, I think some of them will be answered in the next section of the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and advance through the rest of the technical tools, and then we'll have lots of time to continue to answer your technical questions related to the 6th NR if they're not addressed in my presentation. So I'm going to run you through several technical tools that UNDP, CBD, and UN Environment have been working on together over the past several months for you to support you in this project. So the first is a technical guidance report. So what you're seeing is that it's available in French, Spanish, and English from the CBD website. The goal of this document is to do a couple of things. It's to help build the capacity of parties to ensure the reporting process improves national decision-making processes related to the implementation of NBSAPs, that you're using the best available data to monitor indicators of biodiversity status and trends, that you're able to effectively engage stakeholders to develop reports of progress towards achieving each Aichi biodiversity target or national equivalent, and that the reporting process is indeed informing the Global Biodiversity Outlook and the Global Biodiversity Strategy of 2021 to 2030. Next slide, please. So we have developed this technical guidance resource using material from the COP decisions 27 and 28, which we hope that you've all read and are familiar with. And if you're not, then 27 clearly lists out the decision related to the 6th national report and everything required in it. And decision 28 lists out the global indicators that are recommended for reporting on each Aichi biodiversity target. I see that there's been a lot of questions about indicators in the chat, and that's an excellent reference. There's also the 6th NR resource manual and online reporting tool that Lige referenced. All of this information was condensed within this technical guidance document, along with, next slide please, these resources from CBD and UN Environment related to indicators and SDGs and NBSAPs. Next slide. So within this report, we took each of the 20 Aichi biodiversity targets, and if you're not reporting on Aichi biodiversity targets, then you likely have a related national equivalent. And for each of these, we provide you background on the target, information on the key challenges to date in achieving it, links to the SDGs for that particular target, a guidance on assessing the national contributions of this target to the ABTs in the strategic plan, potential indicators, data sources, and then links to other multilateral environmental agreements. Next slide. I wanted to talk you through what each section of this document looks like so that you're familiar with it before you dive in. The introduction just talks about we're going to walk through the example of Aichi Biodiversity Target 5, which is habitat loss being halved or reduced. You have information on what the target is and then what particular trends we're looking for. So for ABT 5, we're looking at the rate of forest loss being at least halved, where feasible brought close to zero, the loss of all habitats being at least halved or where feasible brought close to zero, and degradation and fragmentation being significantly reduced. Next slide. So we share the linkages between the SDGs and Aichi Biodiversity Target 5. There are 4 SDGs that are related to habitat loss and degradation, and there are several sub-indicators of those. So you have that information, which should ease you in reporting on linkages between the two and making those crosswalks in your national reports or other work you're doing to link your conservation work with your sustainable development work. Next slide. We provide you a series of key questions that you can use in your stakeholder discussions and also when you're thinking about what indicator you're going to use and how you're going to track it and what kind of conversations you're going to have. So key questions for this target might be, what are you doing to, what measures have been taken, strategies and actions to have or eliminate the rate of forest and habitat loss? Are you identifying drivers of forest loss, including commodities? Where are the best opportunities in your country for having degradation and fragmentation? How is the rate of forest loss affecting in the country changing over time? And what are the most significant drivers, social, economic, and demographic, that are leading to habitat conversion? So we try to include at least 20 provocative questions per Aichi Biodiversity Target that you could discuss in a stakeholder engagement group or with your peers to help really answer progress assessment on this target. We also provide you with potential indicators, which often are just a flip on the key questions, something like the rate of habitat degradation and fragmentation is significantly reduced. Are you achieving that? Has the rate of loss changed? Is it identified? Is it spatially mapped? What are the effectiveness of the NBCEP strategies and actions? Next slide. And I should just state, we try to provide at least 15 to 20 indicators, potential indicators per Aichi Biodiversity Target. And again, we assume there's a national equivalent related to that. We provide you guidance on spatial data overlays that might be available. Things like for this target would be habitat extent, habitat intactness, distribution, thinking about wetlands, grasslands, drylands, coastal habitats, all the habitats that exist, ecoregions, spatial data on land cover and land use change over time, human footprint layers, and then spatial information on sustainable management where it exists, such as certified sustainable agriculture, forestry, or fisheries. We also provide links to key data sources. So for this Aichi Biodiversity Target, we're thinking about things like Global Forest Watch, the FAO Global Forest Resource Assessment, and also dossiers that the CBD Secretariat has already provided on this data. I also wanted to share that there's a final section that looks at the linkages between this target and multilateral environmental agreements. There isn't a slide about that, but for each target, there are typically at least 4 or 5 other multilateral environmental agreements out there that have related national reports. We're talking about things like CITES. So we tell you exactly where you can go within that report to get related data. Next slide. So I wanted to share a bit about the technical review framework as well. Its purpose is to ensure that parties' 6 national reports are aligned with the Decision 27 from the last COP and related guidance. And the framework also provides an outline of the key elements that should be included in the sixth national report that countries may consider using. I know that the Asia region is a mix of countries that worked with UNEP before and UNDP. For the UNDP countries, many of us worked together during the NBSAP project to provide, to participate in the peer review framework. So basically what it is in the next slide is we're going to provide you with about a 64-point framework that is like a checklist of what should be included in a technically robust, gender relevant, data relevant sixth national report. And we'll provide that with you in the next couple of weeks, and that will allow you to use it as a roadmap as you're developing your sixth national report, but also when you're done with it, or when you have a draft of it, you can send it to us and we will be able to evaluate the technical stringency of it and then provide you ideas of where you could change your approach to include more data. Often folks are just missing key information like who the stakeholders are that participate in their project, and they don't realize that they don't have that table. So things from that to pointing out key data sources, we're here for all of that. I just wanted to point out in this slide that outcome 3 of your ProDoc includes a stakeholder-owned sixth national report, and a part of the steps within that is circulating a draft of it to your steering committee, UNDP, UN Environment, and/or CBD for technical review, and then reviewing the information we provide and incorporating additional data sources and expertise where you can. There was a lot of talk earlier in this call about when we are hoping to see drafts, and of course, the earlier the better. But I also just wanted to let you know that we're here whenever it is that the draft is ready, and it's just great if we know it's coming 1 or more weeks in advance, because we're supporting 64 countries, and it just helps me to schedule the time our team needs to make sure we have someone available to review your documents. We also encourage you to submit them for review when they're far enough along to where we can actually provide some feedback. So not so early in the process that you haven't met with stakeholders and reviewed your data, but not so late that the document's already being technically validated by the government and isn't, there's no chance to change it. However, if that's what happens, I think this is just a great learning and information tool for the future as well. The last thing I wanted to share is that it would be impossible to get a perfect score, I think, on the technical review framework. It just represents, the body of guidance out there that you can achieve. And we really just hope it opens up a conversation about how, data is being managed, how indicators are being used, what data is available, what stakeholders are being consulted, and things like that. Next slide. I wanted to share that we are available for personalized technical support, consultation support, administrative support, and data support. I think there was a question earlier about how do we connect. We're available by email and Skype. I would encourage you, if you're writing to me by email, to please also copy my team, Petra, Marion, and Martin. As you can imagine, overseeing 64 countries in this project, I get an enormous volume of email, and I take time off as well, or I go on a mission, and sometimes emails get lost. So if you're copying everyone on my team, then we can ensure that we're getting back to you, hopefully within 24 to 48 hours. If you're not hearing back from us, it's not because we're not interested, it's just because we didn't see the email. So I encourage you to be as proactive as possible to make sure that you get the information you need. When you're corresponding with us by email or Skype, it's great if you can put, especially for email, your country in the subject line so that we can keep the technical support we're providing you organized and streamlined. And then by Skype, also, if you can always just put your country first, that helps us recognize a name and a place. So we're here for all those kind of support. We also work really closely with CBD and UN Environment and can connect you with those folks as well. I think sometimes people are surprised that, Lige and I do work very closely together. So you may often I may hear from Lige some feedback that you've provided, and then I'm happy to follow up and support. And it may also go the other way, but just know that we're a unified team that's really working to provide you as much support as possible as quickly as we can. Great, next slide. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the NBSAP forum. I know some of you are already members. It looks like the slide animation is a bit strange here, but what you're seeing is the NBSAP forum. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes page. It looks great on this slide. So what you're seeing is the NBSAP forum. It's a tool that's been used around the world for about 4 years now to communicate, learn, and share about biodiversity and sustainable development. Our goal through this website is to support you with the development and implementation of NBSAPs and then reporting on the effectiveness of those efforts, which is the national reports. To date, we have 28 themes related to the Aichi biodiversity targets, and we hope a 6NR page will be launched by the end of this week. There are over 4,000 members from across the globe, all conservation practitioners. We have over 1,500 resources on the Aichi biodiversity targets. We have almost 200 best practices on the Aichi biodiversity targets. There's a peer review submission opportunity if you'd like to go further than the technical review and also share your national report with your peers. That opportunity is there. And then we have links to free online courses, massive open online courses, and our webinar recordings. For example, I just wanted to share last year, we educated over 11,000 people who participated in our 2017 webinar series. So the webinar series has a huge reach, and you'll be learning more about the specific webinars we'll be offering related to 6NR shortly. If you could click, so we'll be launching a new website by mid-March, and you can see a preview of it here. It has several new features that I want to go over with you today because I think that they will be very helpful as you begin working on your national report. First, the navigation is simple. We fully integrate with your Twitter and Facebook accounts, your smartphone, and all of your social media. So any content that you find on the forum you share and you like, you can also share and like on your own social media accounts. We find that that's the way that most people are communicating anyway, and we wanted to be able to integrate this information into your life further. Not to bridge the work-life balance, but just use this as a tool so that it's always there for you. You can we organize e-learning courses and webinar libraries in a library by theme. You can edit documents, post and comments that you make. We simplify the process for uploading, downloading, and sharing resources and best practices. There's a section of our homepage that's specific to job openings, learning opportunities, and announcements, but where before it was all mixed up. In doing that, we also created opportunities to connect with other experts through dedicated online discussion forums on each topic, Aichi biodiversity, and then things like spatial planning and 6NR. So we hope that allows you to have the conversations we know we're having, you know, bilaterally or just through email or Skype on a forum that's password protected, where you can connect with experts around the globe or in your region to really try to together. And you also have a personalized dashboard that tracks discussions you comment on and the documents you share and upload. So we're really excited about the new site and all the new features. Once it's launched, you will be hearing a lot from Marion and likely our colleague Hina, who will help you to get oriented to the new site, begin using it to connect with colleagues and find answers to questions. And we look forward to launching it soon. Okay, next slide. I also wanted to share that in the next few weeks, we have a document right now that's under final review related to stakeholder engagement. It focuses on how to effectively engage stakeholders through a national reporting process and how to ensure their knowledge is incorporated into your report and any follow-up activities. Related to that, we'll be also hosting a multi-part webinar series for you, I think in April. Okay, next slide. We also have a data tracking tool that we'll be releasing later this month. It's also under review right now. The spreadsheet is intended to complement the CBD online reporting tool, and it enables you to enter data on a provisional basis, share it with stakeholders, and then upload the final results into the CBD online reporting tool once consensus has been reached. There are 9 tabs related to, if you could go back. There are 9 tabs related to national targets, national strategies, the actions that you're taking, the progress you're making, the obstacles and capacity needs, and then contributions to the Aichi biodiversity targets, the global plant targets, and the IPLCs. The data is all included in drop-down menus, and you can input information from your own NBSAP, or we can actually send you a pre-populated spreadsheet in most cases, and it's entirely voluntary and is intended to help with the consultation process. There's a lot of data to organize, and we thought that one of the best things we could do would be to help you organize it from the start. Okay, next slide. So we also wanted to talk about spatial data. Next slide. So last year, as we were concluded the Global Support to NBSAP project, we conducted an internal study at UNDP of the use of spatial data within post-2010 NBSAPs and national reports. And our results were somewhat surprising. We found that the average NBSAP had less than 4 maps, and the average national report, where we thought, oh, maybe all those maps are just there and all that great spatial data are in the national reports. Well, they weren't. The average national report had less than 5 maps. 30% of NBSAPs and 14% of national reports had no maps. And for all of these statistics, at least one map was just a map of the country. So then we took it a step further. Next slide. And we conducted a user needs assessment. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm on my own. No, so go back. Okay, so we collected a needs assessment. We talked to 42 of the 64 countries that we're supporting in the project. We talked to all of you, but we heard back from 45 countries. We conducted this assessment prior to SBSTA, and then we also conducted a needs assessment at the last SBSTA. And what we found was that although 90% of the countries UNDP is supporting for this project have a spatial data lab, the parties told us that the data are often siloed and inaccessible. And we think that that's reflected in the mapping data we're seeing in the national reports previously and then BSAPs. 82% of respondents said they had a high need for land use, resource use, and human footprint data layers. 73% had a high need for basic socio-demographic data, and 50% had a high need still for biogeographic data layers. Okay, so because of that, there's a lot that's missing. So missing data included natural resource productivity, land cover, land use change, invasive alien species, where are they going, which ones are they, what are the risks, future and current human footprint, sustainable land management, ecosystem service data, pollution data, population poverty, and land rights data. Without that, if you could go back one, without that kind of information, it's really hard to ask key questions about our ability to achieve the strategic plan for biodiversity. So things like, where are we surpassing safe ecological limits and why? What are the opportunities to have habitat loss, and where can't we do so because of other threats? Where do we need efforts on invasive alien species to make the most impact to stop them? Where should new protected areas go? Where can we restore and maintain ecosystem services? And what must we protect, restore to avoid extinction? So these kinds of data are really critical to effectively and accurately answer those questions. Okay, next slide, please. So with all of this background, we entered into conversation with UN Environment's MapX division to build a spatial data portal. The first phase will be complete in May. We're looking for pilots. So if you're interested in being a pilot and testing the data within the portal, using it within your 6th national report, we'd love to hear from you. We hope by the end of the summer to be rolling it out to all the countries in the 6th national report project. Within this data portal, we'll be providing a minimum data set to answer key Aichi biodiversity target and SDG questions. Countries will be able to upload their own national data sets. You can query key status and trends questions, and users can also draw shapefiles to capture local knowledge. The key data sets will include biodiversity data on things like ecosystems, biodiversity areas, forest cover change, forest health and connectivity, conservation data, things like protected areas, locally managed areas, indigenous areas, threat information, and then also SDG data like water sources, land tenure, poverty, carbon stocks, and disaster risk reduction. We don't think this will be a perfect tool, but we hope that it can help all of us advance the conversation about and the use of spatial data. In phase 2, we're looking to partner and in conversations now with Google, National Geographic, the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation, and UN Environment to incorporate predictive analyses, scenario modeling, and marksman optimization software. Next slide. The last thing I wanted to share is that a big part of what we've done over the past couple of years with NBSAP project is capacity building webinars. Next slide. Marion has been hard at work on the capacity building calendar for the first half of this year. In February, we're focused on our Inception workshops. In March, we'll be scheduling a webinar on technical tools with CBD. And then in April, we have information on the spatial data platform, stakeholder engagement, empowering women. In May, we'll be looking at communicating the value of biodiversity. And then in June, there'll be a biodiversity finance massive open online course. And we've had a lot of requests for indicator guidance. And then we have Substa in Montreal in July, and hopefully we'll have some pre-Substa workshops there. So next slide, that brings us to the end of the presentation on the technical tools that are available to help you. I would just say that we're also here to respond to your needs. So we want to definitely hear from you about what you need throughout the year, and we can work to bring experts together in webinars and things like that. So with that, I'll turn it over to the group to questions. Please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised right now. So while I'm waiting, I'll go back to the questions that have been typed in, and I'll start with Iwan's question. Section 2 of the 6NR, do we have practical guidance on how to measure effectiveness of the plan? Issue is on collected compiled data from the field across the country and do validation because no mechanisms were established. Lige, do you want to start on that question?
Which question? Sorry, I didn't hear.
That's okay. The question is there practical guidance on how to measure the effectiveness of the NBSAPs, the plans? There's issues on collected compiled data from the field across the country. This is Indonesia, because no mechanism was established to validate it.
On that question, I would say that the countries need to look at the resource manual, where we provide some suggestions how you could do the assessments of effectiveness. But of course, the suggestions there are limited, still general, and it's up to the countries what kind of approach they would like to use for the assessments of effectiveness. And in the meantime, you know, the CBD also has compiled documents for Substa and also for COP, where we put together some of the information from the 5th national report, even the 4th national report, where we find some of useful ways used by some countries to do the assessments of the effectiveness of the measures. I can forward that document later on, there's no problem. But I would say that you know, each country has its own way, approaches to do these assessments, and different indicators they use to measure the effectiveness of these implementation measures. That's what I can say now.
Great, Lige. And then there's a follow-up question from Indonesia. On the tools to provide evidence, how will we include spatial data analyses into the online reporting? Is there a limitation on file size and number of words?
You know that that for the spatial data, I think probably you could provide more advice on this. Definitely, if you can, we encourage you to you know, include in the spatial data or the images in the tool. But if there is any technical limitations, you could definitely send by, you know, a kind of annex or appendix. Or you just, you know, that on the tool, they also have a place where you could attach the related documents. So, you know, there are some ways we can figure out that you could include this in the tool.
Great, thank you so much, Lige.
Yeah.
Please provide more details on how to access the geo-reference data available internationally. So as Lige and I both mentioned, there's the resource manual, but there's also the decision 28 of the COP, and then the information from that is consolidated with other resources we've gathered on what data is already available internationally for each Aichi biodiversity target. So if you look at the technical guidance tool, you should be able to find that information there. If you have questions, if there's particular data that you need for your country related to different IT biodiversity targets, if you could email me and tell you a list, we can work to get that information for you. We also have a spatial planner that we're working to hire on our team, and this person can work one-on-one with you to get that information as well. Okay. There's a question, do we need to write the report directly to the online portal? If so, is the format already there? Are we supposed to follow the guidelines given at the beginning? Lige, over to you for that question.
I understand that the question is about the tool, not portal, right? I think it's about the tool. Yes, for sure. You could. The tool is designed to allow country to enter the information directly in the tool. And we encourage you to use tool for the inputs from getting inputs from different users, different departments, institutions, and then of course for the consultations. And if you have the whole report online using the online tool, and then you could submit a report directly from the tool as well. Yes, for the entering the information, for the preparing the report itself, definitely you needed to following the guidelines adopted by COP, and then the templates, as I said now, the templates on the tool is more or less the same as the templates on the paper. So there are mostly the similar requests, and also where the space also provides you to allow you to provide detailed information to support your assessments. So yeah, sure, yeah, you can use the tool to prepare the report directly.
Thank you. And I also just want to clarify that the guidelines being given directly match the tools, so they are the same. Can you clarify if these are NFPs for 6NR or NFP for CBD? Right. National focal points. I'll give you that question to you, Lige.
Yeah. I think it's, that first of all, that usually the national focal points takes the overall responsibility for the national reporting. But if the national focal points say, okay, I would like to appoint someone particularly taking care of the national reports, and also they would like to nominate a national focal point for national reports, definitely that that this national focal point will for the national reporting will take care of the risk coordination. So it's up to how the countries manage the whole process. So did I answer your question?
Great, thank you. Other questions? And for folks who did type into the chat, if you would like to raise your hand and further expand on your question, if it wasn't clear, you can do that and we can unmute you. This is our time to get your questions answered. So please feel free to also use the hand raising function, and we can also communicate that way. Is there a spatial data analysis position at the country level? Will that be hired collectively at the global level? Who will work with the countries, or does each country need to hire themselves? So the PRODAC encourages you to use some of your funding to hire your own spatial data analyst if you have the capacity to do so, because we think that this piece is so important to creating a informative national report that is actually data driven and that can inform the 5th biodiversity outlook and the next decade. However, if that does not work for you, we are hiring a global level spatial planner, and we're also going to be developing in the next couple of months a roster of spatial data experts that can support you with some of this work. We're also developing the online portal. Like I said, it'll be available this summer, and it is going to be designed for someone that does not have spatial data expertise. So the hope is that any one of us could go in and kind of do the analyses and get the maps that we need out of it. The MapX portal was developed for conflict places to help policymakers make decisions. And at the beginning of April, we'll be hosting a webinar so you can learn more about that. I hope that answers the question. The next question is from Ling. Is the online reporting tool optional? Lige, that's a question for you.
Yeah, at this stage, yes, the online reporting tool is voluntary, and but as I said, that we encourage countries to use the tool because, you know, frankly, we see this as kind of a transition to the future reporting. You know, if you say, okay, I would like to do the report in a traditional way, and then I prepare the report on the paper, and then I enter the information on the tool, that's fine. But we encourage countries to at least to do the both. But if you just use the tool, that's fine. But if you use papers as well, that's fine. So for time being, the short answer is that the tool is voluntary.
Great, thank you, Lige. Other questions? And again, we also have the hand raise function where we can take you off mute to further expand the discussion. Okay, any other questions on the technical tools or the project timelines or from the CBD, or for the CBD, I should say? Okay, so then with that, I'm going to thank our CBD colleagues. Lige, thank you for spending this time with us today. And we're going to transition now into the operational aspects of the project.
Thank you, Chrissy, and all colleagues and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. With that, we're going to transition into the 6th National Report project implementation arrangements, and I'm going to introduce Petra to give us that presentation.
Thank you very much, Chrissy. Good afternoon or good evening to everybody. My name is Petra Balashtinova, and I'm providing operational support to the 6NR project. And during today's workshop, I'll be covering issues related to programming, finance, budgeting, procurement, and reporting. Next slide, please. So the 6NR project will be executed under a DIM, Direct Implementing Modality, with UNDP being the implementing partner, and it will be implemented by the Istanbul Regional Hub. However, there is a possibility for UNDP country offices to request change of the modality for their country projects to NIM, to National Implementing Modality, if the countries feel that the NIM modality would better serve their needs in their countries. In this case, a letter of agreement will need to be signed between UNDP country office and the new implementing partner and submitted to project coordination unit, meaning Chrissy, myself, and Marion. And the budget revision would need to follow in Atlas. I just would like to highlight that unless change of the modality to NIM is requested on the country level, DIM is the default modality set both on the project level as well as on the country level. So the project is expected to be implemented by the country offices also in the countries. Next slide, please. Okay, given the complexity of the project and the number of countries from different regions involved, there are different roles and responsibilities envisaged both from the side of the UNDP country offices, from the side of UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub and the coordination unit, and from the JEF unit. In terms of implementation arrangement, the main role of the UNDP country offices at the initial stage is to consolidate the national project team and throughout the whole process ensure project quality assurance and compliance with UNDP administrative rules and procedures. UNDP IRH will take and the project coordination unit will take care of the Inception workshops and preparation of the Inception report. We'll be preparing and coordinating project steering committee or project board meetings. We'll coordinate your preparation and also ensure compliance with UNDP administrative rules and procedures. UNDP JEF will be providing technical inputs and support in identifying of potential candidates in the recruitment processes. In terms of annual work plans, next slide, please. Each UNDP country office will be responsible for preparing their own annual work plan together with the national counterparts, and then also will be responsible for monitoring the implementation of the annual work plan. UNDP IRH and the coordination unit will be consolidating all the annual work plans that are coming from the country offices, and will be preparing annual work plan for the global project, which will be then submitting to Jeff for their review and approval. We'll also be reviewing expenditures and budget balances under the project. UNDP Jeff will be providing advisory services as required, and will be reviewing annual work plan and give approval to ASL. Next slide, please. In terms of financial management, UNDP country offices will be responsible for effective and efficient execution of financial resources strictly for the purpose of the project. And UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub and the coordination unit will take care of approving the budget revisions, reporting on expenditures, monitoring and ensuring that there are no overspendings. We'll also be taking care of the project audit, and we'll be allocating funds through the letter of authorizations to the UNDP country offices. UNDP Jeff will be allocating ASL based on the cleared annual work plans and monitoring the project to ensure that the proposed activities comply with the agreement. And we also will be monitoring to ensure transparency and clear reporting. Next slide, please. In terms of results-based management, the UNDP country offices will be expected to provide inputs to the project implementation report. So no project implementation reports shall be prepared by the country offices themselves. If need be, you'll be requested to provide inputs to the project implementation report to be submitted on the project level by the project coordination unit to Jeff. However, on the quarterly basis, you'll be requested to submit quarterly progress reports on project achievements, planned versus executed activities. UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub and the coordination unit will be ensuring results-based management modality throughout the implementation of the project. We'll be preparing project implementation report for submission to Jeff, coordinating the terminal evaluation, and also preparing management response to the terminal evaluation. We'll be regularly updating the Atlas risk log and also completing the tracking tool. UNDP Jeff will be providing advisory services, perform quality control, and will be reviewing the global project implementation report, providing inputs and rating on the development objectives and implementation progress. Next slide, please. In terms of project evaluation, the project evaluation will be coordinated on the global project level by the UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub. So the UNDP country offices will be required to only support the terminal evaluation process, talk to the terminal evaluator, provide necessary information that will be requested by him or her. However, there are no terminal evaluations expected to be carried out on the country level. UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub will also review the tracking tools, prepare management response to the terminal evaluation, and will be gathering lessons learned and consolidate good practices. UNDP Jeff will be providing technical inputs, technical support and analysis, and perform quality control and disseminate technical findings. As far as project closure is concerned, again, the project closure for the global project will be done by both operational and financial, will be done by the Istanbul Regional Hub. And UNDP country offices will be only responsible for preparation of final project expenditure reports. UNDP Jeff will provide advisory services as required, give technical inputs, and perform quality control. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of project monitoring, the monitoring, or in other words, continuous measurement of project results is key to success of the project implementation. The main monitoring tool is the results and resource framework defined in the project document. Project monitoring basically asks if the project is making difference and indicates progress achieved towards the planned outcomes and objectives. The proper monitoring arrangements require monitoring and evaluation plan both on the project level as well as on the country level. And monitoring is also closely related with risk assessment. It's very important for to identify risks and also ways to address the risks upfront. And for the country offices, the risk assessment will also be part of the quarterly reporting. And if there are instances where the country offices feel that the new risks have emerged, please feel free to add new risks to the risk log and propose countermeasures to address them. Both M&E plan and the risk assessment are then important inputs for the proper planning for the project, and are then reflected in the annual work plans, procurement plans, and also budget revisions. And all of the above then feeds into project reports such as project implementation reports or project board minutes. In terms of project board, next slide, please. Thank you very much. Project board is basically a group responsible for making by consensus management decisions whenever guidance is required by the project manager. Project board provides overall guidance and direction to the project, provides guidance in case new risks emerge, and the project board agrees on possible countermeasures and management actions. The project board reviews project progress, approves progress reports, annual work plans for the next year, and also approves quality assessment ratings for the project, and assesses and decides on project changes through appropriate revisions. The project board structure, is defined as follows. There are 3 roles involved. The executive role is being performed by UNDP IRH manager. The senior supplier, which basically represents interests of parties providing either funding or technical expertise to the project, is being performed by UNDP CBD Secretariat and Global Coordination Committee. And the role of the senior beneficiary to represent the interests of those who ultimately benefit from the project is represented by the country representative. And next slide, please. In terms of the senior beneficiary role and the composition of the senior beneficiary representatives on the steering committee, we think it's very important to ensure equal representation of both UNDP country offices and national counterparts, and also to take into consideration fair geographical distribution. The representatives of the countries on the steering committee are still to be decided. It's a decision that we need to make jointly together, and we would like to propose, given the overall composition and the number of project board members, that the senior beneficiary role is being performed by 8 country office country representatives, 4 UNDP country office representatives, and 4 national counterparts representatives. We propose 2 members from LAC, 1 from Asia, and 1 from the mixed regions for both the roles. And the countries or the members are not yet identified. Therefore, we would like to kindly ask you to think about it, and if you are interested to represent your country or region in the project board, or would like to nominate somebody from your country, please feel free to share your nominations with us by March the 9th. We'll be collecting all the nominations from the countries and reviewing all the nominations and trying to come up with the best possible composition that meets the criteria stated above, which is the equal representation and fair geographical distribution. Next slide, please. Okay. In terms of annual work plans, one very important thing needs to be noted up front, and that's that all budget revisions in Atlas are to be done by UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub and the Project Coordination Unit, and this function will not be delegated to UNDP country offices. As the projects are, is a DIM project managed by Istanbul Regional Hub, I also would like to highlight, because we had some cases already, there is just one project per each of the regions which have been entered into Atlas, and there are no projects envisaged to be entered on the country level. So the one project per region basically represents all the 17 countries that are part of that particular project. So no separate projects should be entered on the country level, and all budget revisions in Atlas are to be taken care of by UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub and the Project Coordination Unit. What is required from the country offices is that whenever there is a need for the revision of your annual work plan, please send us a revised annual work plan to Chrissy, myself, and Marion for us to review and approve. And once the revised annual work plan is approved, we'll make the necessary revisions in Atlas and submit the revised annual work plan for the whole project to Jeff for their clearance. Jeff will allocate ASL, and we will then issue authorization letter to your country offices with the relevant COAs, and basically from that moment you can start spending the money in line with the revised annual work plan. I just would like to mention here that we are aiming to process the next budget revision in the next few weeks, ideally in the first half of March. So all countries that need to reallocate funds from 2017 to 2018 or make any other revisions to their annual work plan are encouraged to send us their revised annual work plans at your earliest convenience, ideally by the end of the next week. As we'll need to proceed with the budget revision in a coordinated manner, meaning to do a budget revision for more countries at the same time. And so the next budget revision is planned for mid-March. So if you want to make it for the next budget revision, please submit the annual work plans, the revised annual work plans at your earliest convenience. Next slide, please. In terms of the next slide, it's just an example of how the Excel file, how the annual work plan should look like. I just like to highlight that the first few columns are entered based on the approved project document. Those columns should not be revised. This is a reference point for us to see how the budget has been changed throughout the years and throughout the revision. So the only columns, all the changes should be made in columns K to Q. So you will need to update the 2017 expenditures, enter the previously approved budget, which is referring to the December 2017 budget, and enter a new proposed budget for 2018 into column A. The column Q refers to budget notes. Please only leave numbers in the column Q and add all the explanations below the annual work plan. Please note that all changes and reallocations between the budget lines and components should be duly explained and justified. So you'll need to basically make a point for each of the reallocations and explain why are you reallocating the funds from one budget account to the other, or one activity to the other. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of allocation of funds to country offices, I just would like to highlight that there is no physical transfer of funds from UNDP IRH to UNDP country offices going to happen. The funds are being allocated through authorization letter to UNDP country offices for their country level activities based on the annual work plan and the budget. So basically, after you submit the annual work plan to us, we'll make the necessary revisions in Atlas. All the funds for your country office activities are entered under your respective operating unit and your respective budget department, which means that once the budget is approved, you're able to spend the funds and manage the funds locally. Next slide, please. Okay, few financial arrangements. Similar to all other GF projects, it's very important to note that no general management support fees can be charged by the country offices in this project. In terms of direct project costs, those are to be recovered on the basis of actual costs, so not as a flat fee or transaction fees, and include the cost of any activities over and above the project cycle management services. As already mentioned, the funds are being allocated to each of the country offices under your operating unit and under your budget department. The COA is always mentioned in the authorization letter that you receive, and since the funds are allocated under your budget department, the country office will need to assign staff to approve POs and vouchers in line with the internal control framework. The only thing that remains centralized on the project level are IREC approvals. Due to the number of countries, it was not possible to add the IREC approvers from 64 countries. So we'll be taking care, Chrissy and myself, of the IREC approvals for all countries. Please do remember to, in addition to submitting the IREC for approval directly in Atlas, please remember to send us an email with all the supporting documents to speed up the approval process. Next slide, please. Okay, just to mention that all the country level activities are to be implemented under project components or project activities 1, 2, and 3 as defined in the project document and as entered in Atlas. There's additional 4th activity called project management. The only costs that are to be charged by the country offices to the project management activity are the direct project costs. Otherwise, the country offices should not be using the project management activity. And similarly, the DPC can only be charged to the project management activity. No DPC costs should be charged to activities 1, 2, and 3. Next slide, please. Okay, so as far as reporting on the project level is concerned, so we are now holding the 5 Inception workshops for each of the regions involved in the implementation of the 6NR project. And after the Inception workshops, we'll be preparing the Inception report that will need to be cleared by UNDP IRH, Jeff, and also by the project board. In terms of project reporting, we'll be submitting the project implementation report to Jeff. The next one is planned only for 2019, but as already mentioned, there are no BIRs expected to be submitted on the country level, only on the project level. UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub and the coordination unit will also take care of the terminal evaluation. We'll be hiring independent, impartial, and rigorous terminal evaluators to review the project implementation and the achievements, and we'll be also submitting the final report to be then approved by project board. On the country level, the country offices, next slide please. The country offices will be expected to submit quarterly reports to the technical project advisor, meaning Chrissy. Those are to be submitted through an online application by the 20th of the month following the quarter, which means that for the first quarter of 2018, we'll be expecting you to submit the quarterly progress reports by April the 20th. Very importantly, please note that this is different from the CBD online reporting tool. This is a progress report on the implementation of the progress on the implementation progress. Financial reports for the project will be handled by the project coordination unit, but it's very important that the country offices will monitor their financial expenditures against the planned activities on a regular basis. And you can also find some just suggested reports that you can use to monitor the expenditures. And PCU can always request clarification and additional information or supporting documents for the preparation of the consolidated financial reports for the project from the countries. Next slide, please. As far as the quarterly report, basically the main purpose is to provide an overview of the progress achieved during the past quarter. And the online reporting will provide centralized information platform and will enable us to collect and analyze information more easily. The quarterly report will include the narrative part, which will report on the progress achieved, on the co-financing, lessons learned, stakeholder engagement, risk assessment or gender action plan. And we'll also have a section on the technical support required from the project team, where you'll have a space to specify what kind of support in the upcoming period you may need from the project team. The progress report will also include a stock take form, which will be a very quick overview of the current status and indication of support required. It will be basically an A4 page with 20 plus questions from different areas, where you'll just be checking boxes. And for us, it will be a very clear indication in terms of the progress your country has achieved in each of the areas and what kind of support will be required from our side. The quarterly report will also include financial report, basically to provide an overview of expenditures as of the end of the quarter. Next slide, please. Okay. So now we come to the frequently asked questions, which are basically a compilation of questions that we have received from several countries until now. Of course, you will have a chance to ask any additional questions after the presentations. So next slide, please. Okay, so very frequently there are questions related to whether or not government officials can be recruited under the 6NR projects as individual consultants. Generally, the government officials shall not be hired by UNDP under IC contracts unless two conditions are met. The no objection letter in respect of the individual is received from the government, and individual is certified in writing by the government to be on official leave without pay. So if the two conditions are met, there is a possibility for the government officials to be hired as individual contractors. Next slide, please. As far as the service contract holders are concerned and whether or not they can be engaged in other employment modalities, in general, no individuals under service contract can be engaged in any activity in conflict with the obligations under their service contract or in public employment with except of teaching at academic institutions. And in case of any activities outside of the service contract, the service contract holder must immediately notify the UNDP country office. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of financial reporting and accounting, there are a few ineligible expense accounts, which this generally applies to all GF projects, so it may not be a surprise to you. A few accounts such as the 751, which is for GMS, shall not be used. As already mentioned, GMS is not to be charged by the country offices. Also, please avoid using account 735 and 727, which relates to reimbursement costs and hospitality. Particularly, the hospitality one is being monitored by HQ, and please avoid using it. If you have any costs that have already been charged to this account, please recharge to 757 or 745. For the 745 miscellaneous, please note that the budget line should in general not exceed 3% of the total project budget. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of the direct project costs, they're associated with the implementation support services provided by the UNDP country offices. They're usually applied either using the universal price list or local price list for transactional cost recovery, which is a preferred option, or using a country office workload study methodology, or in some cases, which is more rare, more standalone DPC projects are created on the country level, but mostly the option 1 is being used, which is universal or local price list. Next slide, please. In terms of the Atlas budget codes to be used, the DPC or UPLs are generally composed 70% of the staff costs and 30% of the general operating costs, and respective budget accounts should as such be applied, meaning that the 70% of the GMS should be charged to account 64397 and 30% to 74596. The DPC budget for all the countries have been budgeted in Atlas to respect the distribution between 743 account and 643 accounts and 745 account. Very important information, the maximum amount of the DPC to be charged per country for the duration of the project is $4,000 US. It's specified in the authorization letter, and this amount cannot be exceeded. Next slide, please. Okay, what can be charged under the DPC? Generally, it's the DPC can be charged for services such as payments, disbursements, recruitment of staff, procurement of services or goods, organizing of trainings, workshops, conferences, travel authorization, ticketing, travel arrangements, or shipment, custom clearance, vehicle registration. There is also a negative list in terms of what is not considered a DPC and what cannot be charged as DPC. Next slide, please. And these services basically include general oversight and monitoring, project manager functions, direct technical inputs to the project, compilation of knowledge products, local capacity assessment or determination of execution modality, receipts or allocation and reporting to donor, IT infrastructure or branding or knowledge products, knowledge transfers. Next slide, please. Okay. Every DPC payment or related transaction should include a very clear description while processing Atlas. This is very important for audit purposes. Also, a copy of UPL list for the corresponding year should be attached to the payment documents, and also supporting documents are needed for the collection of DPC. So it's an obligatory requirement to back the payment with proper reference documentation or other relevant documents. Next slide, please. So as already mentioned, since the 6NR project is a global project executed under a DIM modality, it will be audited as per DIM audit rules through the Office of Audit and Investigation. It will be audited only on the project level, so no audits are expected to be carried out on the country level. And as such, no funding should be set aside on the country level for audit. The audit will be done only on the project level, and of course, we will expect the country offices to to cooperate with the auditors once they are hired. Next slide, please. I would just like to highlight a few points towards the end of my presentation. Prompt action in respect of the deadlines is crucial by UNDP country office project support colleagues, as the approval processes are long. We have 64 countries involved. So whether we talk about submission of requests for budget revisions or reporting and collection preparation of project reporting, it's very important that you adhere to the deadlines. And because if one country doesn't send the figures or supporting documents on time, it may delay the other countries as well. Please note that the country offices are responsible for your own project delivery, as the funds are allocated under your budget department. We will closely monitor the country office project delivery in line with the approved annual work plan and budgets, and may request some clarifications from your side if there is a need. Of course, budget revision can be requested throughout the implementation of the project. Situation can change. Reallocation between budget lines or activities can be required by the countries. So please give us an advance notice and send us work with us to revise the annual work plan, or send us the revised annual work plan, and we'll try to process the budget revision as soon as possible. Just please know that, as already mentioned, there are 64 countries. We'll really be trying to proceed with the budget revisions in a slightly coordinated manner, meaning doing budget revisions for more countries at the same time. So we may not be able to do the budget revision immediately, but we will try to speed up the processes to the extent possible. Next slide, please. Just a couple of points related to travel, as we already had the questions raised by some of the country offices. It's very important to note that JEF funds should not be used for supporting country participation in COP. All funding should be spent for producing a high-quality national report, and all project-related travels basically need to support production of the report. As far as communication is concerned, when communicating with the project team, please make sure that you always make reference to the project ID in your country. We are receiving tens and tens of emails on a daily basis from different countries. It really helps us to respond to your requests in a more efficient way. If you're mentioning your country and project ID in the subject line, and also please make sure that you copy both Chrissy, myself, and Marion on all communication. We are a team, we work together, and if you copy all of us, also the chances that we'll be able to respond to your requests in a timely manner is much higher. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thank you, Petra. We have time. We're right at the end of the hour, but if folks are able to stay on, we will take the questions related to Petra's presentation, and if you need to leave now, we completely understand, and thank you for joining us today. Okay, can we add graphic and pictures to the online reporting tool? Yes, you can. I think you're just uploading PDFs. We have a question from Grace. Do you have templates for the quarterly progress reporting?
Yes, we are. Right now, we are finalizing the quarterly reporting template, and we'll be sharing it to you in the course of March, so you can work with the template and submit the first quarter report by the 20th of April. So it's right now it's being finalized, and we hope to share it with you as soon as we can.
Great, thank you, Petra. Next question is from Pek Chan. Will the PCU be preparing and circulating the quarterly progress report template to the country office? Yes.
Yes.
We will be doing that, and we hope to circulate it, I would say, by the April 1st, so you have it if not sooner. From Mohammed, does the UNDP country office need to prepare country level signed annual work plans and procurement plans? If yes, who will be the signatory, CO or PCU?
Okay, we don't necessarily need the annual work plans to be signed. If it's a regular process that is applied in your country office, that all the annual work plans should be signed, feel free to have it signed. But for the purposes of our budget revisions, we don't necessarily need a signed version of the work plan. If it's submitted by the country focal point in charge of whether the program or the financials, I think the email communication coming from you to us is sufficient. In terms of the procurement plan, I think it's a very useful tool on the country level for you to have the procurement plan, since you will be hiring a number of consultants under the project. Whether we do need a procurement plan, not necessarily, and we don't need the signed one, but it's very important for you and your country office to have a procurement plan in place.
Great, thank you, Petra. Next question is from Grace. How do we report the final expenditures? Can't this be generated in Atlas, or is there a manual reporting requirement?
Well, we'll definitely be relying on the Atlas project reporting, because those are the reports that we'll be using throughout the project implementation. We'll be asking the country offices basically to run their own reports and to compare the expenditures with the annual work plan, just to make sure on the country level that the expenditures basically match with the annual work plan. We'll obviously be running the financial and the expenditure reports also on the project level, and if there are any clarifications required from the country offices, we'll definitely approach you and your colleagues with any questions that we may have to certain, maybe excessive expenditures on a certain activity or budget line. We'll be following up with you, but please make sure you monitor your expenditures on a regular basis, and if there is a need for any reallocation of funds, please submit a revised annual work plan to us rather upfront in advance, so we can accommodate the changes in your needs, rather than having to do it backwards at the end of the project.
Thank you. The next question is from Margaret. Is the Jeff OFP to be on the steering committee?
What is OFP?
Yeah, Margaret, I'm gonna take you off mute in the hopes you can tell us. Hi, Margaret. What is OFP?
So, are you going to unmute me? Hold a second.
You're unmuted already.
Okay, hello, thank you. Jeff, operational focal point.
And is that somebody at the country level?
Well, it's government staff, because you said that the government can have some representatives on the steering committee. So I just wondered if it would be somebody like a project director, or particularly the Jeff operational focal point. So the Jeff operational focal point is the Jeff, like the focal point within the country, and it is government staff, usually highly placed, like a director general in a ministry.
Okay, I think our preference would be somebody that was familiar with the CBD, specifically the 6 national reports and then BSAP, so they could really help to drive and inform the project, and probably not somebody at that level. We will be inviting a Jeff representative to serve on the steering committee. I think when we're looking for representatives from the countries, we really want it to be someone that can be your voice and what you need and what you feel about the project.
Okay, so not the CBD focal point either.
I think it really just depends on who it makes sense to nominate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, we're going to put you back on mute, Margaret. The next question is from Grace. How often can we do a budget revision, Petra?
Well, depends on
this is Petra's favorite question. That's why we're laughing.
Depends on your needs. I mean, I don't like to say as often as you need, because we really would not want to do budget revisions on a monthly basis. It's a very complex and lengthy process. But we are aiming to process budget revisions on a quarterly basis if needed. So if there is a need throughout the year, if you imagine you request a budget revision now, maybe to reallocate funds from 2017 to 2018, and maybe based on some initial discussions that you had with your national counterparts, you need to reallocate some funds from certain budget line to certain budget line. We proceed with the budget revision now. And then during the year, you again need to revise. Of course, it's possible. I don't expect that none of the countries will need to revise more than, let's say, twice within the year. If there are any circumstances that will require you to change more, please let us know, and we'll try to accommodate that to the extent possible. But we will be trying to process the budget revisions, as I said, on the quarterly basis. So if need be, we can basically approve 4 budget revisions during the year.
Great, thank you. The next question is coming from Iwan. Is it correct the budget revision will be approved by the JEF SEC instead of the UNDP JEF headquarters? I assume that by BR you mean budget revision, Iwan, and that's actually not true at all. So this project is based in Istanbul. We're working closely with UNDP JEF in New York, but the project is actually being managed through the Istanbul regional hub, and I am the person that, with Petra's support, is approving your budget revisions. So Iwan, I'm going to take you off mute just to confirm that we answered your question. Iwan, and it looks like there might be some audio issues. So if we didn't answer your question correctly, please just type it back into the box. Okay, next question. With the clustering of finance in GSSU in Malaysia, please note that all vouchers are approved in KL and not at the country level anymore.
Okay.
Okay, and maybe you want to send an email about that, Grace, to Petra, so she can put it into a file. The next question is from Mohammed. How can the country office access the online tool for quarterly reports? We'll be sending you out that information by email. It should be noted that this is from Mohammed, Afghanistan UNDP country office SOP for quarterly reports has a different timeline. We online get financial reports by the 28th of the following month. I don't know, Petra, if there's any concern there, or if that's something I think we could just talk about offline. And if when you guys receive the quarterly reporting framework, if there are any issues, we can take them to an account and then revise them for the next one.
I fully agree. This is something that we can follow up separately.
Yeah. There's some questions about the PIR. So the Istanbul team will do the PIR, and that is due in 2019. However, if we close the project in time, then there's no PIR due at all. But these quarterly reports are due, and then we'll use them to report about the effectiveness of this project to the UNDP JEF team and also the CBD and the JEF team themselves. Okay, can JEF funds, which are meant for 6NR reporting and country support participation and travel to any regional workshop related to 6NR, such as held in country? Yes, we did give you a training budget. You can absolutely, there's also a travel budget. So either of those can be used to travel to regional workshops related to 6NR. We don't have any regional workshops planned at this time because we recognize that they are expensive and not necessarily as effective as what we can do in this time. However, we are working with the CBD to plan some pre-subsid training similar to what was done in December prior to the the July subsid or after it, and you will get an invitation to those. And then if there are some regional working groups or things that are necessary, we'd love to hear from you what you would want to see, and we can work on that with you. The funds are not to be used for the next COP. Okay. Do we need to do a budget revision every time there are changes to a budget line item, or do you have a certain tolerance level, say 10%, which will not necessitate a budget revision in Atlas, Petra?
Well, we don't need to do a budget revision every time you're exceeding certain budget line. If there is, as you say, there is not a significant change in the use of funds. But I would like to kindly ask you, if you are requesting a budget revision throughout the year, to make all those changes into consideration and include them in the next planned budget revision.
Great, thank you. There's a question, can we confirm that the quarterly progress report is results-oriented and primarily a checklist? Yes, it is absolutely results-oriented. We request a stock take of where you're at in the national reporting process and some financial information, but then we do have a narrative section where we're asking you to describe like key roadblocks or lessons learned, and we hope that you will spend some time on that. It probably would take 1 hour to complete each quarter. We take that information and again, we share it with several people, including our funders at the JEF, and they are interested in that information, as is the CBD. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of our questions. Grace has a question. I noticed that in the structure, there is no project board at the country level. Why is that? Petra, question for you.
Okay, I was only referring to the project board on the project level, because this is something that will be involved and will be taken care of. But obviously there are steering committee or project boards expected to take place also on the country levels. So, but this is to be taken care of by the country offices. You are right. I should have mentioned it. There are project boards to discuss the project progress or make any important decisions on the country level. So there are project boards or steering committees envisaged on the country level as well.
Great, thank you. So that brings us to the end of our questions, and we're now 10 minutes over when we started. So I think we'll take this as an opportunity to thank everyone for attending today, for all of the questions and dialogue and attention you shared to the 6th national reporting process. We look forward to working with you on it. As I said at the beginning of this presentation, by the end of tomorrow, you'll receive links to the presentations and also the recording of this virtual Inception workshop. And shortly after, we'll be sending out technical guidance material. You have our contact information, so if you have questions and they arise once we're done today, we'd love to hear from you. I know it's really late, so tomorrow morning is fine. And then we're here to support you as you need it throughout the project. We really are a resource working close together with CBD, and we just hope that we can provide you technical and operational support with this project to achieve the goals. Thank you so much for attending today, and we look forward to working with you on this project. Webinar is now open.